Hey, it's Buddy. Before we get into this episode, I want to tell you about my brand new book, From Tailspin to Tailwind, which covers the pivotal moments that reshape Souls for Souls from a flailing nonprofit into a model of success. From revamping core values, innovating operational strategies, to crafting impactful partnerships, each chapter is filled with tangible lessons from the front lines that can help leaders in both the nonprofit and for-profit space. The link to purchase From Tailspin to Tailwind is in the show notes.
Being a CEO or being a leader, we think we should have all the answers. And we think when we don't have the answer, we shouldn't admit it. And what that has meant for me is making decisions that probably I wasn't ready and qualified to make, but I didn't have the courage to admit that I didn't know the answer. And had I simply been vulnerable and shared with my team that I don't know the answer, what do you think? I think it probably would have helped us avoid challenging situations that we've been through. When I really had a team, a tribe of people that I should have relied on, but I thought if I had to, that would make me appear weak. And the job of the leader is to appear strong.
That was the voice of Adam Witty, founder and CEO of Vantage Media and publisher of Forbes Books. In this episode, Adam shares his page-turning pivot from crisis to clarity as we explore his remarkable 20-year journey from fledgling entrepreneur to publishing industry leader. Adam shares his journey of overcoming early missteps, embracing vulnerability in leadership, and creating a company culture rooted in transparency and purpose. What emerges is a candid portrait of a leader who transformed early stumbles into hard-won wisdom, building a company that helps others share their stories while staying true to his own purpose. My name is Buddy Teaster, President and CEO of Souls for Souls, and you're listening to the Repurpose Podcast, featuring candid conversations with business leaders who share the ups and downs, wins and challenges they face along the way, and how they learn to overcome them. These are real stories of going from tailspin to tailwind. Hey, Adam, welcome to another edition of Repurpose, and specifically talking a little bit about tailspin to tailwind. And I think up front it's important to say that that's the book that's coming out that your company's publishing. So this is our second time working together, which is a pleasure. Even though we've worked together and known each other for 8 or 9 years now, this is the first time we've really had a chance to sit down and do a deep dive on more than just the contractual piece and the process piece. So I'm looking forward to it. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Buddy. I'm really excited to be with you today.
So I think let's start in the usual place and just a little bit about who you are and a little bit about the company that you've built over the last, I do want to say 20 years this year, which is danged impressive. So maybe talk a little bit about that to get us started.
Yeah, I know. Do I really look that old? I am a self-described an entrepreneur. Of course, today I have the title of CEO and have the privilege of leading an incredible team of about 100 architects. But really, I self-identify as an entrepreneur. I started Advantage in 2005 out of a spare bedroom in my home and really had a vision. And the vision was helping entrepreneurs, CEOs, and leaders tell their story, amplify their message, and use that to make a bigger impact in the world. And, what I thought at the time was just a neat idea and, turned into just a tiny little business over the last 20 years, very fortunately, has slowly but surely kind of organically grown into today a much larger business. And I've got to tell you, the last 20 years have been quite the ride, quite the journey. There have been highs. There have certainly been some lows as well. But man, I love what I do. And every day I look forward to Monday, when Sunday comes around.
Well, that's good. I know not everybody feels that way, so that's nice to know that we caught you on a good day. But I do want to ask a question to start. As the media landscape has become more and more fractured over the last 15 years or so, attention spans are shorter. I mean, there's all the negative stuff that we can talk about.
Yeah.
Why do people still want to do books? I wanted to do one, but you're talking to a much broader range of people. Why is it still important?
Yeah, I think books hold such a special place in our world, in our lives, and, are really the primary vehicle in which knowledge has been transferred from generation to generation. And, I'll use 2 examples. When you walk into a person's home, for many people, the most treasured place is the bookshelf. And if you have a guest coming into your home, oftentimes it's the first place someone will wander and say, well, what's on Buddy's bookshelf? I can really tell a lot about who he is as a person based on what is or is not on that shelf. And I also like to say, when you go into any city, whether it be New York City or Charleston or Nashville, the most valuable piece of real estate in the entire city is typically the public library.
Yeah.
And I just believe that books hold this treasured, sacred space that, even though technology has progressed at such a rate that people are getting information and consuming content from all kinds of other places,
Mm-hmm.
I do think that we have this reverence for books that is not going away. Now, why do books matter? I think more than anything else, authoring a book credentializes a person probably better than anything, right? When you write the book on the topic, you're seen as the authority, you're seen as the thought leader, and that creates an aura and an air of credibility,
Mm-hmm.
of believability, of influence, and certainly it has the ability to open doors, as you know, as an author yourself, right? When you write a book, it opens up doors for speaking, for consulting, for being interviewed on television and radio. It creates a platform to do a podcast. It creates a level of expertise that people desire. And I don't think anything else can replace that, at least not at this point.
So I have two questions I want to follow up on that are sort of different. How has the technology change in the world impacted how you work with authors and that whole process? Because I'm guessing that's not been unchanged, even though the book is still the outcome.
Well, it's a great question. Technology has really been a friend to authors. Technology has democratized publishing, and technology has made something far easier today than it was many, many years ago. So let's look at a couple of different examples. First, for the author, technology has made ghostwriting and transcription, and now with artificial intelligence, the formatting, the organizing of thoughts, so much quicker and so much easier. Now, I'm not talking about using artificial intelligence to write your book.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about using artificial intelligence in a closed data set to help an author better organize their content to make it attractive in a book format. If you look at something as basic as the word processor,
Yeah.
many years ago, books were written either on longhand on a yellow legal pad or with a typewriter, right? And just something as simple as the word processor, whether it's Microsoft Word or to go back in the ages, Word Perfect, that in and of itself opened up so many more doors for authors. But the other area where technology has made such a difference is obviously digital distribution.
Mm-hmm.
So, before, books were purchased in physical bookstores. Today, 60% of all books purchased are bought online,
Wow.
and specifically through Amazon.com.
Mm-hmm.
So if your book is on Amazon, it is available to the world, and it is in the largest distribution point globally for books. So it allows you to reach a much bigger market instantly. Another example where technology has democratized publishing is with something called print on demand. It's a digital print technology that didn't exist 20 years ago. And what that means is that you can create a book and you can literally publish a book that looks no different than any you'd find on the front table at Barnes & Noble. You can print that in a quantity of one. You can literally print one book at a time.
Yeah.
And prior to that, you had to print thousands of books. And, many authors had garages full of books and no place for those books to go. So, yeah, technology has had a profound influence on the ease for authors to create books, but also the distribution and the places their books can quickly and easily go.
This is kind of an aside story. A long time ago, I had a chance to meet the playwright who wrote the play K2, which is about climbing the second highest mountain. It's very dramatic, but they actually climbed the mountain on the stage, and they transferred it to a different venue, and the mountain was much higher. So he had to create a lot of dialogue. And he had written the play originally in longhand, and he needed to write about another 20 minutes of dialogue. And he said, if I didn't have a word processor, the play would never have happened. So you're right, it gets to a very basic level. The other question I want to ask you is a word that you mentioned is authority. And I know that's part of how you position Advantage in Forbes Books now. But what about the other side of that, Adam? I talked about tailspin to tailwind being a little bit of like, when things don't go well. The other side of authority, at least one of them, is vulnerability. How do you approach that as an entrepreneur? And as you said, you've had ups and downs. But if your authors are only, I have the answer, does that work? Is that something that you've had to help them navigate in a different way than 20 years ago?
Yeah, well, I'll answer that in two ways. First, personally, and then in the lens of an author. So personally, there's no handbook of how to be a successful entrepreneur and CEO. Yes, there's lots of great books that have been written, but none of them have all the answers. And so many of us, we learn through the school of hard knocks, right? We make decisions, and some work out and some don't. And those that don't work out, we hope to learn from those experiences and not repeat them. And, one thing that I will say is being a CEO or being a leader, being an entrepreneur, we typically associate strength and conviction and vision with those words. And unfortunately, all of those words, which have positive attributes, also have a negative side, which is we think we should have all the answers. And we think when we don't have the answer, we shouldn't admit it. We should pretend like we do know, even if we don't. And what that has meant for me is making decisions that probably I wasn't ready and qualified to make, but I didn't have the courage to admit that I didn't know the answer. And had I simply been vulnerable and shared with my team that, man, I don't know the answer. What do you think? Or how would you approach this? Being a bit more humble, I think it probably would have helped us avoid challenging situations that we've been through, right? Simply because I was relying on me when I really had a team, a tribe of people that I should have relied on, but I thought if I had to, that would make me appear weak. And the job of the leader is to appear strong. Now, to turn the page, no pun intended, and talk about for an author. The best authors are those that are willing to be vulnerable in print, right? Because when you have all the answers and think you have all the answers and take that tone in your writing, I think most readers see through it, and it doesn't seem authentic. One of the greatest lines that I heard an author of ours share, this was about a year ago. I was talking to him on the phone. He was a very successful entrepreneur. His net worth was well into the high 8 or low 9 figure range. And he didn't have to work another day in his life. And he had embarked on a journey of writing a book. And he was very dedicated to sharing his book with as many people as he could. And I said to him, why are you doing this? You could easily be playing golf. You could be boating or surfing or traveling the world. Like, why are you putting all of this time and energy into this book? And he said, Adam, I have been blessed throughout my life with so many things. And I feel like I have, through my experience, received wisdom and learnings that if I don't share with others, I will be taking it with me to the grave, and I will regret the fact that I've done that. He said, I know so much, and I know that if I share that with others, it can help them. And he said, my goal is to die empty. And the
Mm.
reason I'm writing this book and the reason I'm so motivated to share its content with everybody that I know is I want my experiences to help others so they don't have to make the same mistakes that I did. And, when I'm on my deathbed, the question I'm going to ask is, did I give all of the gifts that I was so fortunate to have received? And, I thought that phrase, die
Yeah.
empty, was so beautiful. And what it required was a level of maturity, a level of humility, and a level of vulnerability to say that, hey, I'm not doing this for ego's sake. I'm doing this with a real spirit and desire to serve and help other people. And, I believe if you are an author with the goal of impact, not ego, you can make a profound difference in the world.
Yeah. Boy, that is a terrific line to keep in mind, to die empty. I like that. Thanks for sharing that. So I'm going to push you a little bit. You talked about some of the times when you wished you had said, I don't know, and invited your team in. Can you talk about a time when you're like looking back, boy, that was a close run thing. Like it could have gone the other way. And you and I aren't sitting here in 2025 talking to each other. Can you
Right.
share a moment where that really came home for you?
Well, man, where do I start? I can say that my mistakes, which are many, have been, certainly mishires.
Mm-hmm.
There was one person whom I hired very early in our company's existence, who everybody around the table had a twinge of uncertainty about.
Mm-hmm.
There was something about this person that just didn't feel right. And I love their resume and I love their background. And I threw caution to the wind and made the decision we were going to hire this individual. And this individual embezzled money from the company
Wow.
to the degree that, if I didn't have somebody come in and bail us out, the company would not be in existence today. So that's one example where literally we were on the margin and
Yeah.
on the edge. And again, had I listened to the people around me, I wouldn't have made the decision to hire this person because everybody around me was saying, something just doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And of course, throwing caution to the wind, I'm the powerful boss and CEO. Surely I know better than them. I make the decision and it almost ended up costing us our company.
That is a dramatic example of a decision that almost really went the wrong way. So that you couldn't recover from. I guess that's the other thing
Right.
to keep in mind is rarely is it that close to catastrophic. I mean, lots of bad decisions are uncomfortable, but they're not fatal. Yours was close to that. So thanks for sharing that. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Something that I know we share that sort of gets, I think, a little bit to this, Adam, of sharing and vulnerability and transparency a little bit is we both use scaling up and align and that whole Rockefeller habits. I don't know exactly what language you use. So can you talk about what that's meant to your company when, because of the transparency and the engagement of your team, they know you don't know everything and you can lead with that? How has that changed your organization?
Yeah. I would say that the two words that I have focused on more than anything as a leader are number one, clarity, making sure that where we are going as an organization, what our priorities are as an organization, are abundantly clear to everybody in the company, from the highest level executive to the bottom level frontline contributor.
Mm-hmm.
The second word that I focused on is alignment. And that is not only is it clear, but everybody is working together to accomplish those priorities, those key initiatives, those targets, that vision. And so clarity and alignment are the two words that I focused on more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with that also comes the word transparency. And I believe people are more clear and more aligned when they know what's going on. And in most cases, the more they know, the better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you empower people, if you trust people, then your mindset changes from the more they know, the more they can help, as opposed to the typical belief of the more they know, the more they could hurt.
Yeah.
If you have the right people on the bus, the more they know, the more they can help. And the more they know, the more bought in, the
Mm-hmm.
more empowered, the more valued they feel. And that's how you get the best out of people.
Yeah. Our experience is the same. It is, we've been using it for, 10 years or so now. I mean, we've grown up. It hasn't been everybody from day one. Now it is. And it has transformed the organization. Like, I don't know how we would be where we are if we hadn't made that commitment to transparency. Everybody knows what's going on, knows what the priorities are. It's hard to imagine running it a different way, but I know people do.
Well, and we are transparent to the degree that we share our financials with our team.
As a private
And
company.
as a private company, we don't have to do that. And I don't have a line of people banging at my door saying, hey, tell us what's going on here, here, and here. But I just feel the more they know, the more they can support and help us fix problems
Mm-hmm.
and fix challenges that are in front of us. And the more they feel that they can be a part of the solution. You know, one of the beliefs that I have is that when you don't share financial information, the people on your team come to one of two conclusions in their head. It's the story they tell themselves.
Yeah.
The first story is the CEO and owner is getting so rich off of the backs of our hard work. It's crazy. The second story they tell themselves is, oh my God, we're about to go under. I
Right.
should start looking for another job. And 99% of the time, it is never one of those two situations, right?
Right.
But if you don't provide information to people and if you don't give facts and data, people come to their own conclusions and they emotionally, emphatically come up with their own stories that they
Yeah.
tell themselves in their head. So I'm just a big believer in sharing information. And the biggest comment that I get is that, oh my God, I've never worked at a place
Mm-hmm.
that has been this open and transparent with how we are really doing as a company.
Well, look, you're in the business of narrative, and people will fill in the gaps. Like, they'll have to, we all have to have a story. So I think what you said is, there's a story out there. You can decide how much you want to participate in it when you talk about your financials or performance or whatever it is. And to the extent that you don't, people fill in the gaps, and it can be catastrophic or it can be antagonistic. Rarely is it positive when there's a gap of information like that. I want to ask you a question that's kind of related. Look, you don't get to where you are, Adam, with an organization that's been around this long, survived some tough things, 100 people, that's a big responsibility. And I know you have all this other stuff you do in your life. You have some other businesses, you have young kids. I think work-life balance is kind of a dumb phrase. So I'm going to put it to you a little more directly. How do you make the compromises that you have to between the stuff Adam likes, the stuff you need to do as a father and a spouse, and then as a leader? And how do you articulate those compromises to yourself and to those around you?
So I have never looked at it as work-life balance, as you mentioned. I like the term work-life purpose. And that is that if what I do professionally is aligned with my life purpose, then I'm never going to work another day in my life. And if I'm true to my purpose, that's going to come through to everything I do with my family, everything I do with my friends. And if I'm living my professional purpose, I want my kids to see that.
Yeah.
I want it to inspire them to, as they get older, find a profession that gives them great purpose and inspires them too. Now, balancing it all is tricky. For me, it's about putting key relationships as the number one priority.
Mm-hmm.
Making sure I'm spending the right amount of time with the key relationships professionally that are going to drive our success, and making sure I'm spending the right time personally with the key relationships that are going to drive my family's success. So, spending time with my two boys, spending time with my wife, spending time with my parents, with my in laws, really, really important. Spending time with my key executives that are helping us drive our company, really, really important. And, when you're trying to get a lot of stuff done, you've got to manage your time really delicately.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's a lot of things that you could do, but you probably shouldn't do. And, most importantly, there's a lot of things that you probably have to start saying no to.
Yeah.
And as long as you're clear as to what your priorities are, then, saying no is actually pretty easy to do.
So, Adam, thanks for tying in purpose to the name of this podcast. That was beautifully done. Appreciate that. So, you talked about that in different lanes, your life purpose, which goes across all of these different parts of your life. Do you articulate that do your executives know what some of your personal and family priorities are, or do you try to keep those separate?
Yeah, it's a great question. So my team does know some of that.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know all of that, but they do know some of that. And I'm an advocate of, I think the more you share, the more benefit it can give you. Our company's purpose is growing entrepreneurs and businesses to benefit mankind.
Hmm.
We believe a growing business, a growing nonprofit is an incoming tide that lifts all boats,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we believe that when we help our members build their authority and amplify their message to have more impact, that helps them grow their organization,
Yeah.
right? So we believe the work that we do is sacred in helping our members prosper and the ecosystem around them, making sure that, is prospering too. For me personally, I am dedicated to helping people discover and and realize the joy of entrepreneurship. So I would love to use my time and talent personally to help people discover and realize what entrepreneurship can do to their life. That doesn't mean that I need and want everybody that I meet to be an entrepreneur, but it does mean that when people realize the power of entrepreneurship and discover maybe an inner fire within them, magic happens. And I believe people can achieve their true potential,
Mm-hmm.
some of which we know there's people walking around the world today that haven't discovered and haven't realized their true potential. And if we can help create the next great generation of entrepreneurs, or even if it's just inspiring one, for me, it's a way to really feel like I'm living my purpose.
Thanks for articulating that. It's great to hear. It is important. It's a big part of our work is supporting and helping entrepreneurs around the world. And sometimes it sounds a little grandiose to say entrepreneurship, but we've seen it make a difference in people's lives, literally between not eating and eating. I mean, so there's a whole range of from very basic to the kind of aspirational things that you're talking about, but they all come from the ability to have agency and take control and put your dream into action. So thanks for sharing that. It's clear that it animates a lot of you and your book. So I'd like to ask the last question, Adam, a little differently. Often it's what did you wish you knew 20 years ago? I'm going to sort of flip it around, and I think you're probably well suited to this. I don't know how old you are. You've got young kids. I'm going to guess 40s, maybe. 20 years from now, okay, there you go. 20 years from now, when you're in your 60s, what do you want to look back and remember about right now? Not necessarily what you've accomplished, but what is about your life right now do you want to make sure you remember 20 years?
I would say that the true joy of life is the journey, not the destination. And I think it's really easy to get fixated on the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And it's real easy to get fixated on just imagine what our life will look like once we achieve this destination, whether it's financial wealth, whether it's selling the business, whether it's getting the kids out of the house and into college, whether it's, getting accepted to this prestigious school or university or country club for that matter. We all have these stations that we're aiming for. And what I have realized, sometimes the hard way, is that the true joy of life really comes from the journey, not the destination. For many, you reach the destination and you had told yourself the story that life was going to be so great once you got there. And then you get there and you strangely feel unfulfilled. Mm-hmm. And if instead you had just put the same energy that you had put on the destination into enjoying the little parts of every single day, enjoying the process, enjoying the person you're becoming to achieve something great. I think that that's what I'll remember 20 years from now as being most impactful, is having learned the hard way, focus on the journey, not the destination, enjoy every moment, and find the beauty in everything, including the hardship, which, is not an easy thing to do.
Great. Perfect way to land the plane on this one. Thanks so much for sharing that, Adam, and for navigating whatever you've had to get here. Like you said, I know you work with hundreds of authors every year to get their ideas and stories out in the world, and that's a good thing. So thanks for making things a little better, for showing people the opportunities in entrepreneurship, and for sharing that today. Really appreciate it.
What a pleasure. So good to be with you, buddy.
Thanks for listening to the Repurpose Podcast with Buddy Teaster. You can learn more about what we do at s4s.org. And if you like this content, please share, rate, and review our episodes wherever you get your favorite podcasts.